I'm very pleased to welcome Doreen Bogdan-Martin, Secretary General of ITU, International Telecommunication Union, to this latest episode of the IOE Peer-to-Peer interview. Thank you very much, Doreen, for joining us. It's a real privilege to have you with us today.
Well, thank you. I'm very happy to be here. Thank you.
I don't have to tell you how the world is changing, and we are now in a crucial moment, digital transformation, but also the multilateral system is becoming, I would say, more and more important, despite the questioning. And we also see that artificial intelligence is also transforming the world of work, but the world of people's life, and bringing also incredible income opportunities. There's also a kind of push from many sources to use it responsible. And we have this word human-centered or human control. But under your leadership, Doreen, the ITU has been at the forefront. And that's very clear for all of us. You have this initiative, which is called AI for Good, which has become a leading platform for global collaboration. The summit, we have witnessed that, has grown. And the event is not just attended by companies, but also by company leaders. And we saw last year also some CEOs, important CEOs, but also policymakers, researchers. How do you see this summit evolving? What is the most significant achievement from your perspective? We would like to know about that and then start a conversation on this area.
Well, terrific. Thank you. Thank you again for the opportunity. I would say, coming to your question, and maybe like the biggest achievement of AI for Good is really becoming the leading multi-stakeholder platform, I would say, for collaboration, which is very focused on practical, human-centered artificial intelligence. That was the goal, basically, when we started. We started AI for Good back in 2017, so in a pre-generative AI world, very focused on solutions for sustainable development. And as I said, it's an inclusive platform where we have our 194 countries coming together. So it's policymakers, it's also regulators. We have our UN partners. We have more than 50-something UN partners that have been with us since the beginning. And we have thousands of companies, researchers, technical experts, academics that come together to work to actually make sure that artificial intelligence serves humanity and not the other way around. I think the platform has succeeded because I think in part because we were prepared, and also because we leveraged the strengths of the ITU, including our technical strengths. So a lot of our work in artificial intelligence predates our first summit and is very linked to our standards work, our telecommunication standards work, where we had specific AI related standards, but also now very focused on artificial intelligence. So bringing these different stakeholders together, whether it's AI experts, whether it's data owners, I think that really helps us to be able to provide a platform to advance sustainable development. I think we've nurtured a sort of new, innovative ecosystem focused on scale, focused on impact, and trying to bring the right specialists together, whether it's in healthcare, if it's in education, if it's agriculture, food security. We have also, I think, been successful in strengthening the global understanding of AI governance. We had our first AI governance day last year. We've repeated it again this year. And I think that's helpful to bring different countries together at different levels in terms of their AI strategies and policies, to exchange, to look at best practices. We're also advancing a bit when it comes to skills and capacity development to make sure that we're helping countries and their population to be better prepared. I think also as we look to the future, we'll continue to focus, obviously, on our standards work, on that capacity building and skilling piece, which is such a concern for so many countries, and also a big focus on youth. I think that's quite critical. And we have things like youth challenges. We have a Robotics for Good youth challenge that has also been quite successful. And I think, Roberto, perhaps if I can also shift and ask you a question, Since we are seeing this growing emphasis with artificial intelligence for good on AI skills, workforce readiness, and inclusive adoption, from your perspective, how do you see the IOE's engagement in terms of artificial intelligence in general, but also specific to AI for good? If you want to share your thoughts on how you see it moving forward.
With pleasure. Listen, you know the history of IOA. We are an old organization. In fact, we are already 105 years old. We have been engaging with different UN organizations, but I would say that the relationship that we have with you is becoming of utmost importance. We have business organizations, members of IOE all around the world. We can say it's our member organizations. We always try that they are A, representative, and B, independent. And that means also that they have a kind of big policy push at local level. I mean, I can give you the example of our French members, which are MEDEF, our Colombian members in Andy, our Indonesian members also that have a push, especially on those policies that are going to affect skills, the world of work, but also the social impact of policies, all that has, and of companies, all that has to do with the due diligence responsibility. Our engagement with you would like to focus on one side on capacity building because many of our members are lagging behind. We represent also mostly small and medium companies, but also how we can help to frame policies that dissipate all those fears and make a better situation of a win-win, okay? Because you are very much aware that this fear approach will not lead to anything. At the same time, the way local business embrace AI will make a difference also for policymakers at local level. So that's how we would like to engage with you on the AI for good, how we can have sometimes also difficult conversations, policy difficult conversation, and we can discuss about that, but also how we can better shape the local policies to give also better solutions at local level. That would be my short answer, Doreen, to this question, how we want to engage with you.
No. Great, great. And by the way, ITU is 160 years old.
Wow.
We're slightly older.
So you're our elderly sister organization, let's put it like that. But then what we see also, if I may, we have the Global Digital Compact and UN Initiative and the UN Pact for the Future. We also have recently the Doha Summit on the Social Summit. We have UNESCO also working on this area, UNDP. We have the UN Envoy on Technology. There is a broad approach on AI and on technology. How you want all of us to work on coherence, on coordination, avoiding duplication? I mean, that would be also of utmost importance for the coming future. Now that there are many voices also questioning the efficiency and impact of the multilateral system.
Yeah, I think that's a great question, and I completely agree with you that coherence is critical. We have to connect the dots, and in this space, it doesn't help if we're competing or duplicating. I want to just add, because you mentioned a couple of examples, maybe just to also add the WSIS plus 20 process as another piece to leverage when we look to how all the components fit together. I think if we look at the Global Digital Compact, it kind of has these five main pillar areas on the digital divide, on the digital economy, on open and secure internet, including the human rights dimension, the data governance piece, and of course, the artificial intelligence governance. And from the ITU side, we're co-leading the piece on digital divide, I think rightly so because of our mandate. And we're also co-leading with other stakeholders on the artificial intelligence governance track. And so what we have in the UN system, we have a coordination group. It's called the Working Group on Digital Technologies. I have the pleasure of co-leading that group together with the Tech Envoy. I think also to note is that we have another, let's say, longer standing interagency mechanism. We have a working group on artificial intelligence, and we co-chair that group with UNESCO. I think what's great about that group, which has been around since our very first AI for Good Summit, is that it gives all of the parts of the UN system to be able to contribute how they're using artificial intelligence. It could be something being done inside an organization, but it could also be uses of AI in terms of delivering their missions and mandates externally. So we've been compiling kind of use cases. We have hundreds and hundreds of use cases that come from these different UN organizations. I think that helps to serve as a sort of one-stop reference for all of these UN resources. I think the second piece, and this comes to your examples, is that we have to align everyone around kind of a single work plan instead of many different work plans. And so as we're co-leading those different groups of the Global Digital Compact, we also have to weed in from our perspective our own initiatives, like our school connectivity work. And I know your team has been tracking that closely. Our work with UNICEF under the GIGA initiative, our work linked to sustainability, where we have our Green Digital Action Initiative, our AI skilling piece. And so we're trying to make sure those pieces are synced up. And in December, there will be the high level session to look at the WSIS plus 20 review. And so we want to make sure that also the UN group on the Information Society Coordination Mechanism is further strengthened to make sure that all of those digital governance pieces are actually connected. I think another piece from a Geneva perspective is that we have, let's say, a great working relationship across the agencies, funds, and programs that are in Geneva or have offices in Geneva. And we run something called the Let's Talk Digital series, or we call ourselves the Geneva Digital Kitchen. And so we try to take on big topics, new topics, and try to figure out how Geneva as a whole can also contribute to advancing the goals of the Global Digital Compact, and I would say digital development as a whole. But if I can also jump in again and maybe ask you a further question from your perspective, if you can, and maybe share your thoughts about the steps. What are the steps that you think we, the international organizations, need to be taking so that we effectively integrate yourselves, that we effectively integrate the private sector into those UN policy discussions on digital transformation and, of course, on artificial intelligence. So, do you have thoughts about that, and how can we collaborate better together?
Thank you for the question. I believe this has to do with the need also to have the proper policies. It's not, to be very frank with you and honest, it's not always easy for the business community to have policy discussions in a manner that they can, and when I say they, it's the companies we are working with, but also the business organization, they can, in a very honest and sincere manner, provide you the inputs based on their, on their daily work. Let's say that there are many pending policy conversation, which goes from algorithm management to cybersecurity to AI competition. I believe that on policy, the best way to engage with you as business is to have safe spaces. And then, of course, build a stakeholder approach, because it's not just about the private sector. We need other players. But this kind of safe spaces with you will help us to move the agenda and to identify areas of action where the private sector can engage effectively. That's what we do in IOE. And we also launch our own initiative or our own community. We call it the Business Alliance for AI. But at the end of the day, the way forward is not just to have our own conversations among ourselves. We need an organization like yours, which is a key leader, to help us also to identify areas of action on policy, how we can overcome, by instance, issues related to algorithm management at the workplace, or in terms of intellectual property, or what are the bases also for AI fair play, if we can discuss that in a very sincere manner. And then, of course, engage other stakeholders beyond the private sector. But having this conversation with you having this first step of safe space will help enormously, really. And that also leads me to another question I would like to raise to you is fears. How we can dissipate fears, okay? I know that there are legitimate concerns, and we have these discussions also, by instance, with the trade union movement and with many people in the International Labour Organization. We understand the concerns, and they are very legitimate. Some concerns are also among our members, but how we can overcome them, how we can also have this idea that AI, of course, should have an human component under control, controlling, how we also can overcome the discussion on job displacement, job destruction that very often comes when a disruption like this comes to the scene. Do you have any ideas?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, of course, we are often faced with that discussion, especially when it comes to jobs, right? Job displacement, but also job creation. And some of the statistics and numbers that we see, we'll have X number of jobs displaced. We'll have X number of jobs. There's usually a bit higher created. So how do you leverage that? And I think coming back to the skilling, capacity building piece is and reskilling. I think that's also quite critical. But I do think that we have some, I would say, some global guidance like emerging to help us as we look at this, whether it's the Global Digital Compact or the high level advisory bodies report, the HLAB, their report on AI governance, or even our recent AI governance dialogue back in July, where the chair's outcome was a series of 10 principles looking at how AI has to be safe, how it has to be human centered, human controlled, transparent, accountable, etc. I think also we see a lot of national and regional policies popping up and starting to move in that direction as well. I mean, we're all well aware of the major framework in the EU, the EU AI Act, or also in Africa, where we have the African Union's continental strategy on artificial intelligence. That also places a strong emphasis on the human part, on human oversight, on inclusion, also that responsible deployment element. But I think one of the challenges is that the policy progress is a bit slow, I would say. We from our estimates, we have uh, I think it's 55% of countries that still lack a national AI strategy. We have 85% that have no AI specific regulations at all. And that leads to gaps in trust and safety and also in social protection. And if I look at Africa, for example, and we take the 55 countries of the African Union, there's only 17 that have an AI strategy. It's a big jump from what it was a couple of years ago, but it's not, I would say, sufficient. Meaning that countries, regions risk being left behind just because AI becomes as AI is becoming central to economic growth, workforce transformation, et cetera, and they risk being left behind if they don't catch up as well on the policy front. But I still think we can be encouraged by the fact that governments are advancing when it comes to ethical frameworks, when it comes to national guidelines, when it comes to skilling roadmaps, and also when it comes to things like regulatory sandboxing that we're looking at for high risk AI and much, much more. Um, Also, just to mention, when it comes to the international space, we do have next year the UN Secretary General's Global Dialogue on Artificial Intelligence. That's going to take place back to back with the ITU AI for Good Summit. We also see encouraging things coming out of the G20 AI Task Force. So I think that's also something to watch as well. And then I guess the last piece, and this comes close to home at the ITU, is the piece on standards. And I think that also encourages me. Lots of work happening, even amongst different standards organizations. ITU closely partners with ISO, IEC, and others. So focused on how to translate, standards that reflect our, not just the technical piece, but reflect our ethical values. We've been working on multimedia authenticity, deep fakes, and that's something that I think the world is awaiting. to have those practical tools to help strengthen trust and also protect freedom of expression.
And it's so important, the work that you are doing, because I suppose that many of the developing economies are lagging behind in terms of capacities, no? I mean, you refer to that. I mean, even internet connectivity, and it's an area where you have been working a lot. I mean, you refer very often to meaningful connectivity in internet, and correct me if I'm wrong, Doreen, but it's still 40% of the entire population of this world do not have proper connectivity to internet. But what are the key enablers for developing economies? How we can push up, how can we speed up the policy development, but also the embracing of AI? I mean, on these developing economies, especially, thinking about those who could be lagging behind if we do not act quickly.
Yeah. Well, definitely you've mentioned it as well. It's the policy piece is critical. So we need to have the policy piece in place. We need to have that enabling framework. That's absolutely critical. And we need to remember that we have to close the digital divide. So if people are still unconnected, they're not going to be able to leverage and benefit from the benefits of artificial intelligence. So that connectivity divide we have to close. We also have to look at things like affordability. And again, this comes back to connectivity. If if the cost of a device is still excessive and the cost of a data package is still excessive, it's not we're not going to increase the numbers of people that are connected and the numbers of people that we call are meaningfully connected. I think also the infrastructure piece we can't take for granted. We often talk about the fact that the planet is covered by a mobile signal, but that doesn't mean that people are necessarily using mobile connectivity. So there are still infrastructure gaps that remain. And of course, electricity challenges that remain with over 600 million people not having access to electricity. That skilling piece that I mentioned before is also fundamental. So if we're like trying to get people to be digitally enabled and powered, we have to build in that skilling focus. We have just released new numbers in terms of the gap. And so when it comes to offline, we're at about 2.2 billion, our latest numbers demonstrate. But that doesn't we often say, okay, that's completely not connected. But even those that are connected may not be meaningfully connected. They may not connect often. They may not be able to get relevant content in local languages and things like that. So I think we're still far from that meaningful connectivity. And I think the countries that are impacted most are the least developed countries, the landlocked, least developed countries, the small island developing states. And I think with the technologies that we see and work with today, there are tremendous opportunities to leapfrog, to close gaps, and to actually accelerate digital progress and to enhance the participation in the digital economy.
And that's also linked to another area, which is small and medium companies, isn't it? I mean, we are doing some work as IOE to provide capacity building for small and medium companies to our members, but it's always a challenge. I mean, and doing it, to be very frank with you, sometimes doing it alone, it does have more limited effects. How we can collaborate on this area? Because many of these small and medium companies are not even aware of what AI can do for them in terms of productivity enhancement, isn't it? So do you have any idea of how we can work with you, precisely focusing on small and medium companies or micro companies? Because sometimes it's just one person or two person.
Well, I mean, I think going it alone. I mean, we as ITU try not to go it alone as well. I think partnerships are fundamental. And so being able to have your constituency leverage the opportunities that our constituency puts forward. We have things, and you've been closely engaged with this, like our Partner to Connect Digital Coalition. And so bringing different players together to look at who can do what, who can commit to what, and see how we can close the gaps and reach the hardest to get. I think also when it comes to things linked to partnerships, we have this Equals partnership that's very focused on women and girls. closing the gaps, but it's also focused on small and medium-sized enterprises and trying to make sure that we can help support and grow women-led businesses. I also think the capacity building pieces are also critical, especially when it comes to smaller companies. And I guess when it comes to AI for good, and a lot of ITU's offerings, many of them are open to the public, and many of them, offered and delivered through different workshops. And so I think certainly, to your members and to your partners, I think don't hesitate to look at the opportunities that the ITU has to help grow, develop, and to partner.
We need to bring more small and medium companies to AI for good. That's for sure. And let's work in this direction. I have a final question for you. How you are transforming yourself, meaning ITU? I mean, we have this special moment for the multilateral system, but I'm sure that such a centenary organization, more older than ours, is also trying also to keep up to the new expectations. Okay, so can you disclose or ask anything about how you want to better support your members, your countries, but also companies and the private sector?
Well, I think for ITU to be at the top of its game externally in a highly competitive state, we need to be up to our game internally as well. So I've been very focused on an internal transformation process. I can tell you it's not easy, but it's necessary. And so we need to make ourselves more efficient, faster, more responsive, so that our members can benefit from the work that we do. We've been focused on, I would say, some practical priorities, looking at how different tools can help to improve a member experience, looking at different ways we can strengthen operational efficiency. And then another kind of critical piece is the staff. How can we empower our staff? How can we get the staff on board through the change process in terms of working innovatively and collaboratively? And so we have different teams across the organization. They're getting hands-on support. We have adaptive leadership programs. We have a change maker programs, and we're trying to really work with the staff to leverage our internal talent, and look at things like modern project management, look at how we can use AI and digital tools to simplify processes so that we can continuously improve our work every day. We want to, I would say, strengthen a culture of learning and continuous learning and innovation. And we do that through these different programs like our change makers. We have something else that we call learning labs. So we bring in experts on different topics and have, kind of training sessions. We have leadership training. We also have a new youth office and gender office, trying to make people understand why it's so important to have young people in our workforce. We also have a demystifying series, which is also lots of fun, where we try to explain kind of in simple terms, highly technical topics. And that also helps staff feel part of a larger mission. And I think that internal process is so fundamental. But it can be tricky because change is not easy. And so we have to keep pushing forward. We have to recognize the challenges that the UN system faces as a whole. We have to recognize budget limitations, staffing limitations, and we need to make sure that we do the best with what we have for our members.
Well, this is a smart move, leading with example. I would like to attend this demystifying training. Perhaps that's also good for us and for many of us. And I just have to say thank you. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much for the partnership. And we are fully committed to work with you. Okay. Thank you so much. We keep in
Thank you,
touch.
Roberto. Thank you. It's been a pleasure. Look forward to working with you more closely.